Hey guys, tonight we're waltzing into the opulent chaos of 18th century Versailles, where being filthy rich was practically an Olympic sport, complete with daily games of who can wear the biggest wig without losing balance. Forget the glitz and glamour. I'm talking about a place where the only thing sparklier than your neighbour's pearls is their commitment to drama. So before you nestle into your ultra-comfy blanket fort, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. No pressure, though. Only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And please spill the beans in the comments about where you're tuning in from. Is it 2 AM and you're having a midnight snack? I feel you. Now dim those lights. Maybe fire up a fan for that perfect ghostly whispering sound and get cozy. Let's dive deep into the eccentricities of Versailles. Ever wondered what an 18th century French noble's morning routine looked like? Did they really need 5 people just to assist them in getting dressed? How many servants did it take to make a cup of tea? What if their favourite pastry was shaped like something inappropriate? And, this is crucial, did people actually enjoy having rotting fish as a gag gift? Congratulations. You've just awoken in the year 1780. Versailles is bursting with laughter, scandal, and enough rouge to paint a small village. Welcome to the extreme lifestyle of the filthy rich, where the only rule is, if it doesn't glitter, it's not worth showing up for. The moment you blink awake in Versailles, your senses are assaulted by a symphony of luxury. Silk sheets hug your skin like a gentle embrace, and the air is perfumed with a blend of lavender and something suspicion-inducing. Perhaps odour-nasty fish. You've arrived at the Palace of Dreams, where even the pigeons probably wear powdered wigs. As you stretch and try to stand, the sheer volume of your nightshirt raises a question. Is this clothing, or did you accidentally step into a curtain sale? The density of fabric wrapped around your ankles makes it feel like you're attempting to walk through a pancake house after an all-you-can-eat challenge. Welcome to your morning in the courts of the Louis XIV, where the first obstacle of the day isn't just getting out of bed, it's navigating the fortress of fabrics that seems intent on weighing you down like a lead balloon. Did Louis ever consider that sashes and ruffles might trip people? Maybe that was the plan all along. Who needs health insurance when you can simply invent an elegant method of knee-taking? You shuffle through the opulent palace, acutely aware of the plush carpets beneath your feet that might as well be made of cloud fluff and well-planned ambitions. Gilded mirrors reflect the splendour around you, making you question if the entire place is an elaborate illusion meant to distract from the mildew scent lurking in the corners. You catch a glimpse of yourself, a bright-eyed noble in a world where even yawning is a form of performance art. But as you deftly try to catch your breath while adjusting your frilly cuffs, your dreams of glory clash with reality. You're late for breakfast in the king's dining room. With all the grace of a duck trying to master ballet, you make your way down the ornate halls, adorned with gold leaf and paintings of cherubs that seem to mock your morning misery. But fear not. Breakfast awaits, in a setting more elaborate than an accidental spring fashion line. Ah, the joy of dining among the elite. Breakfast in Versailles is not just a meal, it's a chance to flaunt wealth in all its butter-dripping glory. You take a seat at a table where roasted peacock garnishes your plate, and you can't help but question who decided that meat should be eaten alongside a splash of ostentation. Is there even a cooking school for this? As the first course arrives, scoops of the creamiest, fanciest butter you've ever laid eyes on, you ponder a crucial question. How do you even spread this without threatening to tear down the entire building? It's more like a game of strategy. Survive the toast without ending up as the star of a viral cooking fail video centuries ahead of your time. But graciously, a servant offers you a butter knife, which is more like a glorified sword for combat than an aid for your breakfast. As you attempt to balance culinary anxiety with social niceties, someone beside you is eating an edible gold-covered pastry, and you can't help but feel a tinge of jealousy. Now, as the conversation flows around you like a river of gossip, you realise that this is more than just a meal. It's a stage for grand performances. Discussions about the latest fashions join plots about royal affairs in a twisted blend of elegance and absurdity that leaves you wondering which will get you in trouble first. The rumours you spill, or the crumbs adorning your lap when trying to emulate everyone else's daintiness. When the last bite of buttery pastry melts in your mouth, a blissful taste, intermingled with the knowledge that you're still wearing an entire realm of fabric, you brace yourself for what comes next, the elaborate dressing ceremony. It seems ridiculous, but there's an entire troupe to help construct your attire. There's more complexity to this than what goes into assembling IKEA furniture. You'll need a few more assistants than fingers to manage the ruffles and fluff that create the ideal noble silhouette. As you lace yourself into yet another layer of excessive opulence, a shadow of truth hovers over you. Beneath this sparkling facade, a life of absurd drama and competition churns. Can you handle the excessive luxury without being defeated by it? Welcome to Versailles, where even the citizens of the court must learn to fight their glorious battles, wrapped in layers of responsibility and elaborate gowns. With the victorious sense of having conquered breakfast and improved your wardrobe to a level only rivalled by the envy of a peacock, it dawns on you. In the courts of Versailles, true power lies not just in wealth, but in the ability to turn life into the most whimsical, yet absurdly fraught, performance art piece of all time. And so, you step away from the breakfast table, ready to plunge headfirst into the magnificent chaos that awaits beyond the gilded gates. It's 10 a.m, and breakfast is served, or at least that's what the clattering of teacups and distant laughter suggests. Feast on a breakfast that's less avocado toast and more swan pâté. How do you even eat that? Do you need a special fork for the tiny edible gold leaf? Is that one scone shaped like a unicorn, or is that just an excuse for artistic license? The dining hall of Versailles is a sprawling wonderland of absurdity, where the mere auditory experience of people enjoying breakfast sounds like a mix between a flock of geese and a spontaneous orchestral concert. As you sit down at a table longer than most family road trips, you notice the absurdity of the feast laid out before you. Towering platters of fruits carved into fanciful shapes resemble the output of a very confused artist having a midlife crisis. Is that a pineapple wearing a crown? The pastry chefs have outdone themselves, crafting a breakfast that feels more like an installation piece at a modern art gallery than a simple meal. Just as you contemplate how to approach the dish that looks suspiciously like a small animal masquerading as a pastry, you overhear a noble lament about their unfortunate lack of strawberries at breakfast this morning. Apparently, this is the kind of tragedy that shakes the very foundations of a royal household. Your own plate looks like a Picasso painting come to life. There's a slice of that peculiar swan pâté, bizarrely garnished with, of course, more gold leaf. Did Europe have a gold leaf shortage, or is it just a Versailles fad? As you attempt to delicately maneuver your fork to slice through this gâteau of confusion, you wonder if this culinary creativity is the brainchild of a master chef or a prankster among the court. To make matters worse, the servants hover like well-trained hawks, eyes trained on your every move, ready to refill your glass with cheap sparkling water. Sorry, mysterious elixir from the depths of the Champagne region. But what's a breakfast without a steaming cup of something questionable? You eye the Le Herbal tea, which is actually just fancy-sounding hot water. No coffee or simple English breakfast for these lords and ladies. They're embracing all great things French, even if that means downing warm liquid that resembles a pretty finger painting by a particularly avant-garde toddler. You take a small sip, hoping to avoid a fit of coughing. If you sputter, you can bet your title no one will pay any heed. Just then, a commotion at the other end of the table draws your attention. The Duchess of something or other has overturned her plate in dramatic fashion, sending bits of what you can only assume was fish upended with some macabre flourish, now decorating the lap of the Count of "Please don't let this be my last breakfast." With an awkward flourish of pomp, the Duchess has become the day's entertainment, making you wonder if court etiquette dictates nutmeg with a side of shaming, all in the name of scandal. With every gasp from the nobles, you realise this breakfast is less about nutrition and more about navigating the elaborate social spiderweb spun from silks and scandals. Before you can mull on the chaotic decorum for too long, a servant approaches and whispers that the king himself will make a royal entrance for his second breakfast, a title that surely entitles him to a corresponding string of royal accolades somewhere on parchment. You stare down at your sparse plate, realising you'd better up your game if you're going to survive this social arena. Suddenly, trumpets blare, deafeningly announcing his arrival. Now you're craning your neck to get a peek as he saunters in dressed like he's ready for a day battle, not a breakfast rendezvous. You feel woefully underdressed, particularly as you realise your everyday clothes may in fact be mistaken for peasant garb. But let's be honest. Compared to the king's overly ornate robes and that suspiciously imposing wig that appears to have its own fan club, you're not just the underdog, you're the underpoor. As the king takes his place and everyone begins to bow their heads, a resounding crash draws your attention back across the table, where an unfortunate noble has just learned a hard lesson about trying to impress with rogue pastry stacking. Flaky layers rain down upon the table like sugary confetti, and for a glorious moment the formal atmosphere bursts into laughter. Just when you think breakfast can't get any more farcical, you realise it can, and it will. So, in the grand dining hall of Versailles, where ludicrous excess is the norm and manners are as fidgety as the restless court, you take a deep breath, balance your wig, and brace yourself. This breakfast tableau is just the beginning of what could be a day filled with beauty, absurdity, and gastronomic art that might just be the stuff of legend, or at least borderline lunacy. Welcome to breakfast in Versailles, where the culinary adventure is only surpassed by the intricate dance of court life. Time to get dressed, an ordeal that involves more layers than a lasagna. Before you can say fashion faux pas, 3 servants are already wrestling you into a corset that practically whispers, "You'll not be breathing today." You wonder if it's a fashion statement or a medieval torture device. Spoiler alert, it's a little of both. As the laces tighten, you can't help but notice that your ability to take a full breath is now about as likely as spotting a unicorn prancing through your chamber. It's less about comfort and more about showing off that ever-elusive waistline, which, in this era, must be no larger than a small loaf of bread, preferably one made with the finest flour and just a hint of hypocrisy. The servants finally declare you presentable with a flourish that suggests you should now be examining royal art in a gallery rather than preparing to face reality. With each layer, they add, the fabric piles higher, transforming you into something that resembles a well-dressed pastry rather than a person. Will anyone dare ask you to climb stairs? The entire ensemble is more sculptural than practical, like wearing a modern art installation that someone decided to also define as haute couture. As you check your reflection, it strikes you that the entire get-up feels like a high-stakes game of will I fit through the door. The intricate embroidery on your gown gleams in the sunlight, an explosion of colour meant to dazzle onlookers, if only they could get past the layers to notice your actual face. And has it occurred to anyone that women here would need a personal assistant just to go to the bathroom? Talk about a fashion faux pas that comes with an instruction manual. Dresses are masterpieces held together by yards of delicate fabric, and the skirts, oh the skirts, have more volume than the entire front row of a fashion show. If a peasant saw this display of wealth, they'd probably think they were witnessing a minor explosion rather than the unveiling of a lady ready to grace the upper echelons of society. Could you run in this ensemble? Please, you'd be more likely to trip over a rogue cat than make it to the soirée in one piece. Now, just as you mentally prepare to embark on the perilous journey of social interaction, you find yourself at the mercy of the accessories. Who knew that a pair of gloves could feel like they are sculpted from 17th century armour? You slip them on, feeling like an elegant, yet undoubtedly uncomfortable, boxing champion poised for a round in the ring. And jewellery? Don't even get me started. Necklaces that could double as a small family pet hang around your neck, reminding you that if the corset doesn't suffocate you, the weight of your own jewels certainly might. As you prepare to leave your chambers, the final touch is a dazzling powdered wig. It's the icing on the cake of excess. This glorious melange of hair, ribbons, and perhaps a bird's nest is topped off with a flourish that makes even the grandest peacocks reconsider their life choices. And can we take a moment to acknowledge the upkeep? You could hire a full-time staff to ensure that every curl remains flawless, lest you turn up to a soirée with bedhead becoming the least glamorous of scandalous descriptors. Finally, with all the hurdles passed and your breath now at a strict minimum, you're led from your chamber, a human spectacle on foot and wading through a sea of silk and secrets. The air crackles with perfumes dabbed on by those more concerned with their image than their carbon footprint. You enter the salon like a goddess, albeit a slightly wheezy one, with every eye upon you. And for what? To navigate conversations about the best silk threads and whose hairstyle looks most suspiciously like a bird's nest? Before you can even respond to the flurry of compliments. After all, these same individuals might chant your praises 1 minute and plot your downfall the next. A quick glance reveals the latest gossip about someone across the room. Was she caught without the crucial layers of fabric? Are her stockings mismatched? The slightest misstep in this world could leave you circulating as the woman who wore last season's lace, and that, my friend, might just be worse than disaster. As the soirée draws to a close, you might wonder, was it all worth it? A cascading wall of compliments, followed by the nagging question of whether you could ever simply be comfortable in your own skin. You sigh as the corset cinches you tighter, reminding you that, yes, this is the era of elaborate dressing, where the art of fashion is both intoxicating and ultimately absurd. You're invited to a soirée, which is like a party but involves more wigs and less personal space. Can you really fit that many nobles into one room without creating a chain reaction of ruffled skirts and accidental elbow nudges? The night promises laughter, gossip, and those huge powdered wigs just waiting to get in a snarl. Will you emerge unscathed? Or will a poorly timed dance lead to a scandal involving creme fraiche? As you step into the lavish ballroom, the air thick with perfume and slightly questionable cheese, you quickly realise that this is no ordinary gathering. The chandeliers sparkle like they're compensating for the inner glow, or lack thereof, of the attendees. Each noble seems dressed like a walking cupcake, layers of lace and frills colliding in a sea of colours that should definitely come with a caution sign for anyone who suffers from motion sickness. You can't help but wonder, how many servants were sacrificed to get these ensembles ready? Your eyes wander to an assemblage of courtiers, their animated discussions punctuated by bursts of laughter that somehow sound both refined and just a tad inappropriate. Few things in life could cause guffawing from a countess, yet here you are, watching as the likes of Lady Fancipants recounts a story involving a goat, a misplaced truffle, and, inexplicably, the king's very own shoehorn. It's a comedic goldmine, and you feel a hint of envy that you're not the one with the killer punchline. Suddenly, the music shifts to a sprightly tune as someone, let's call her Madame Flounce, decides it's time to demonstrate that she is the queen of the dance floor, or at least she thinks she is. As she twirls, her dress flares out dramatically, attempting to span the distance of a modest dining room, causing a domino effect that sends a vase flying into the nearest wall. You wince as it shatters, but unsurprisingly everyone around you erupts in laughter instead of gasps. Finesse! Who needs walls when you have dramatic flair? Just as you're about to join the fray, a gentleman heavily invested in his lace cuffs approaches you and leans in conspiratorially, breathing the stale scent of overripe fruits, or possibly just overripe gossip. Did you hear? The Duke lost his way and ended up at the lowest of society's celebrations last week, at a peasant wedding no less. Apparently he was mistaken for a superstitious figure and was chased away with a loaf of bread. His glee is palpable, and while you might feel sorry for such an embarrassing misstep, it's hard not to laugh along with him. Before you know it, you're being swept onto the dance floor, hands clasped with those of a stranger, who in this brilliant and ridiculous moment feels less like a partner and more of a life raft. The tunes guide the nobles in a dance that resembles an ode to agility. One moment you're gliding, the next you're stepping on someone's frilled slipper. Just how many foot-related incidents have been reported to the court doctor? You half expect to visit the royal podiatrist, where cures for noble foot ailments are proffered alongside the latest fashion trends. As the night wears on, and your feet begin to ache more than the foul gossip circulating about Lady Fancipant's goat disaster, your attention turns to the refreshment table boasting an extravagant array of food. Imagining yourself enjoying roasted peacock garnished with purple turnip flowers, you instead catch a glimpse of an unfortunate dessert shaped like something resembling a battlefield, complete with jelly soldiers fighting atop a rubber-like pastry. The irony of war-torn confectionery strikes you as utterly befuddling. Someone literally made war delicious, and yet here you are considering whether the creme brulee, with its delicate caramel crust, might actually contain enemies lurking within. The conversations flow as freely as the wine, and you find yourself wondering if sophistication is truly the goal, or if everyone is merely trying to outdo one another in the ridiculousness stakes. You lean into a particularly juicy exchange involving a dowager and a scandalous wig made entirely of ostrich feathers. You can't help but raise an eyebrow at the thought of grandiosity taken too far. As the soiree spirals into the realm of what can only be described as ridiculous, you realise that you're not just an observer. You've become part of a vibrant tapestry, woven with charm and chaos. Laughter, after all, is the great equaliser, and in the mad world of Versailles, no one truly stands above the sumptuous absurdity of life. With each clumsy dance and errant pastry, you feel like you might just survive the night, and maybe, just maybe, become a little more sophisticated yourself, armed with a good story that's bound to leave people in stitches. Welcome to the ultimate soiree experience, where silliness thrives and laughter reigns supreme, leaving you with a full heart and possibly a bruised toe. Welcome to the Grand Hall, the Versailles version of your office break room, but with more scandal and fewer coffee mugs. The moment you step inside, whispers ricochet off the walls like an unwanted rebound from a jilted lover. Who just spilled the tea? Wasn't that lady with the feathery hat just engaged to the Duke? Spoiler. She's only there for the free chocolate. Here in the Grand Hall, courtly pleasantries are a facade, and beneath those silk dresses and powdered wigs lies a web of rumours thicker than a wool coat in mid-July. As you stand amidst the laughter and chatter, you can almost feel the drama simmering just beneath the surface. Think about it. The stakes are higher than the ceilings adorned with gold leaf. Every glance, every giggle is a calculated move in the game of who's who in the court. It's like chess, only without the strategy, and all the more for sheer melodrama. Want to win the social scene? You'll have to navigate backstabbing remarks and compliments that could slice faster than a well-trained fencing sword. Picture this. A group of noblewomen huddled in a corner, their laughter ringing out like silver bells. But you soon realise they're actually reconstructing last week's tete-a-tete where Lady Elizabeth was caught tangoing with Sir Robert. Or was he just trying to rescue her from an unruly poodle? It's hard to tell, but panic ensues as the rumour mill churns. You find yourself wishing you'd prepared some sort of armour against the onslaught of gossip. Never trust a noble with a cat, whispers a nearby gentleman dramatically, as if imparting some universal truth. You think that's a bit extreme until you hear a tale about a feline armed with an attitude greater than its owners. A scandalous affair in the making indeed. One nobleman cornered by another gasps. Did you hear about the Duchess's new wardrobe? Apparently she bought every bolt of fabric in Paris. Oh, the sheer horror if that's true. Not because of her audacity, of course. No, it's because any such lavishness practically screams, "I'm richer than you!" A dangerous declaration at a court where envy interspersed with camaraderie is the very air you breathe. Will she flaunt it at the next soiree, or will she hide it in a moment of noble humility for about 5 minutes? Suddenly the conversation pivots as a lady in a stunning crimson gown glides past you, her extravagant gown nearly knocking over an assortment of chocolates gifted by some love-struck courtier. You graciously recover the fallen treats, and wonder if they've been smudged by the rumour of secret relations. Will that endear you to the gossipers, or put you on the radar of their scrutiny? You can practically hear their whispers, ranking you against the illustrious courtiers who have forever claimed the centre stage. Is your attire simple, or is it just your ability to blend into the back row proving to be your greatest shield? And then there's the Duke himself, a walking enigma. He seems more interested in his next agricultural venture than in fending off suitors or challenges to his bountiful estate. Rumour has it that his latest endeavour involves growing peaches as large as your head. Farmer Duke, they mockingly call him. But who says you can't make agriculture sound glamorous? It's all in the presentation. Of course, when you discover that the man is quite adept at fencing and equally scandalous in matters of the heart, your incredulity turns into admiration even among the jest. Amidst the chaos, you notice a devious glimmer in the corner. That's Lady Agnes, who always seems to be in the right place at the right time. Or is she just unaccustomed to being the outcast among the chatter? Stories swirl about her rumoured past, one rife with forbidden love and scandalous betrayals that keep the court on its toes. Every now and then, she glances at you, as if to invite you into her clandestine ranking of unfortunate decisions. Perhaps she's showing a hope for an ally against the very gossip turning into a frenzy. By now you're enthralled, but also exhausted. You've transitioned from a mere observer to an all-active participant amid a parade of whispers, dodging allegations like a peasant avoiding horse droppings. Is your head spinning from the number of characters at play? Good luck keeping track. Once you think you've figured out the Duke's true intentions, Lady Agnes drops words that leave your mind racing, and suddenly you find yourself not only yearning for a cup of tea, but for some kind of survival guide through the social jungle defined by hoity-toity high jinks. And just when you think you might escape, the crowd erupts with a loud laugh. You glance over, and it's clear the Duke's back, and this time he's brought a giant slice of that infamous peach-shaped cake. The rumours will start spinning again. Besides, who could really say no to an opulent dessert? Welcome to the Grand Hall, where every moment is soaked in chaos and cocoa, and the true gold card is knowing when to stay hush-hush, and when to embrace the narratives. questions will persist and laughter will echo long into the night. Attending a royal audience is less about reverence and more about trying to remember the names of anyone wealthy enough to buy you a coffee. As you navigate the intricacies of nobility, trying to avoid that one lady with a hat that captivates small birds, you're left wondering if it's normal to fake a beau while forgetting the names of people who could ruin your life. The hall is buzzing, not just with the sounds of ornate shoes clicking on marble floors, but with the simmering tension of polite conversation, where each compliment is seasoned with a dose of competition. Around you, courtiers flaunt their wealth in the form of fabrics that could practically buy a small kingdom. The man in the corner wearing fuchsia satin, he's not just trying to stand out, he's banking on the idea that if he looks richer than the king, maybe he can whisper sweet nothings into the royal ear. Your brain races as you fumble through introductions, grasping for any semblance of wit that won't plunge you deeper into the labyrinth of social faux pas. After all, saying the wrong name might just lead you down the path of a duel, or worse, dinner with your in-laws. And speaking of food, the banquet table stretches for miles. Is that roast peacock? Or just a large bird dressed up for the occasion? You cling to the edge of your seat, eyeing the main course as if it's a long-lost friend about to abandon you once more. You manage a half-hearted smile at a nearby noble who's attempting to carve the extravagant centerpiece while engaging in a spirited debate over the season's best chateau. Spoiler alert, half of them are drunk already, and the other half are pretending to know the difference between a good Bordeaux and that boxed wine you swore you would never touch again. As you glance around, you spot the king, slouched on a gilded throne, looking more impatient than regal. Isn't he supposed to be the embodiment of grandeur? Instead, he appears one missed meal away from gravitational collapse, potentially weighing on that throne with the full impact of responsibility, or just sheer gluttony. You wonder, is this the price of power? While he competes to keep his eyes open, the queen beside him holds court like an exhausted kindergarten teacher, navigating the endless questions of hyperactive children. Now it's time for discussions about affairs of state, a phrase that generally leads to endless tangents about food quality and the recent scandal involving a courtier caught borrowing a neighbouring lord's prized cow. Forget politics. Everyone here seems more concerned with culinary preferences and anti-bovine theft conspiracies. And as noble names spout like champagne from a broken bottle, you can't help but waste another golden moment pondering if the king's favourite cheese is actually that trendy cheese-aged under the background of Bar King. Honours that's taking over Paris. Is he a brie guy? Or is he perpetually in love with that blue-veined creation that smells like it might just bite back? With each passing moment, you become increasingly aware that the performance of attendance is just the overture to the real show, navigating the egos and whims of those around you. The noblewoman with the feathery hat you avoided earlier offers you a coy smile while adjusting her extravagant plumage. You wonder if it's just display, or if the hat, in sheer weight, has its own personality at this point. Do you shake her hand? A small bow? Or perhaps you should just nod your way into the back of the room and hope you don't trip on the hem of your own gown. Ah, the dance of the audience, a curious ballet where each noble performs their part, some shooting daggers with their eyes while others become unwitting entertainers. You feel caught in the middle, the unwitting jester in the court of absurdity. If only you could pull off a grand sweeping bow followed by a dramatic exit. Then you'd cement your place as the true star of the evening. Instead, you find yourself giving a shout out to fate for not allowing you to wear clunky shoes that could turn this gathering into slapstick comedy central. Just when you think you've found your footing among the chaos, you overhear whispers about the latest rumours blanketing Versailles like a stubborn fog. Someone's planning a soirée that just might dethrone royal dignity, and you can't help but wonder whether that all-organic free-range duck is worth this noble drama. Will it finally cause the uproar everyone is drooling over? At this point, the only crown you want to wear is one made of ice cream as you flit about, eavesdropping on feigned laughter and grand gestures. As the hour stretches into eternity, the audience drags on, but in this world of excess you find yourself growing accustomed to the ridiculous nature of nobility. You now hold the double-edged sword of knowledge, the art of adapting and thriving under the extraordinary weight of expectations. After all, when in Versailles, why not indulge in the bizarre? Even if it involves immaculate feasting, fluttering capes, and the delicate balance of remembering names, all while trying desperately to keep your sanity intact amidst the nobility's perpetual scene. Flirting in Versailles is an extreme sport where wits and swords collide. One minute you're charming a countess and the next you're dodging a duel because someone overheard you admiring your neighbour's embroidered handkerchief. Tumbling female fanatics and fencing aristocrats become a spectacle, one that makes your newly polished shoes desperately wish for a less dramatic event. Picture it. Aristocrats twirling about in their extravagant attire, each garment swishing dramatically as they engage in what could only be described as a high-stakes game of verbal hopscotch. You've got the nobles tossing compliments like confetti, while simultaneously preserving their dignity at risk of their lives. The air is thick with tension, and it isn't just because of the scorching sun beating down upon the resplendent gardens. No, this tension is as palpable as the smell of overly sweet pastries wafting from the confectioner's stall around the corner, an aroma that's been known to spur double takes across ballrooms and boudoirs alike. One moment of misplaced admiration, and you'd think the world was about to end. Who knew complimenting a lady's bonnet could lead to a full-on sword duel? And yet, here you are, caught in a web of intrigue characterised by glances that are just a tad too lingering, and laughter that gets a learning curve added for survival. As duelling becomes all the rage, the rules of engagement are ever so murky. Your opponent isn't just your rival in battle, they're also that charming rogue you danced with last week. It's like a blend of Shakespearean comedy and daytime soap opera, a reality where every flirty quip could be interpreted as a standard declaration of war. With brocaded coats and fluffy wigs bobbing along, it's hard not to keep your heart on alert while trying to dodge an ornate rapier clipping your ear. Who needs a theatrical production when you have nobles acting out romance beneath the chandeliers of the Hall of Mirrors? But if you think it's all roses and ribbons, think again. Picture a gathering where polite conversation is intermixed with dagger sneers and intentional foot stomps, because stepping on a noble's expensive footwear can transform a somewhat convivial gathering into a bloodbath faster than you can say pastry puff. As swords are unsheathed faster than you can say I'm sorry, the laughter transforms into an ominous hush. Nobility takes their fashion choices seriously. If they've adorned themselves with elaborate lace or pearls, they expect the same reverence from you, preferably without having to duel you for it. Then there's the sheer theatricality that comes into play. Those well-practiced stances, the exaggerated gestures as you feign interest in someone's wit while inwardly calculating your escape path, are truly nothing short of brilliance. It's a competitive art, and one flubbed compliment can lead you to be the punchline of a very public jest. You might not just lose face. You could end up losing your fencing partner the way one loses their favourite dessert, without warning, and probably while shouting about the unfairness of it all. And then, as if on cue, along strolls the aloof duke, immaculately dressed, whose smile could charm even the iciest of hearts. Watch out, because that could either mean a grand opportunity for a flirtation of your dreams, or a reason to clutch your pearls in feigned shock. The Duke has a reputation for gallivanting with half the ladies in court, but no one's ever scored a proper on guard with him without a little drama. You could either smirk charm while tackling a duel, or you could be the one making hors d'oeuvres in the nearby kitchen. Features of a cautionary tale woven throughout court gatherings. So, as you sashay through this courtly circus, remember, flirting isn't just fun and games. It's a delicate dance akin to mastery in both the parlance of love and the way of the blade. Will you emerge a victorious flirter, collecting smiles, sighs, and the whimsical joys of favour? Or will you dodge too many heated gazes, find yourself backed into a corner by an overly zealous gentleman, and inadvertently invoke the ire of every lacemaker in the realm? The choice is yours, as long as you remember. In the world of Versailles, you must flirt like a champion while fencing like a well-practiced madman. You can smell the food from down the hall, if you can call it food. The kitchen is a medieval magic show where chefs turn whatever's on hand into feasts that are equal parts imaginative and grotesque. Is that a peacock on a platter or your neighbour's latest attempt at artistic cuisine? Either way, you're definitely not eating the mysterious jiggly thing that just landed on the table. As you step into the grand dining hall of Versailles, you're greeted by a dizzying array of dishes that could make even an iron stomach quiver. Somewhere, a chef is showcasing a strange stew that appears to have been made from ingredients that are not only questionable, but probably illegal. It's bubbling away on a giant stove resembling a medieval torture device, proving to you that food in this time period is indeed an adventure. One spoonful might make you feel like royalty, while the next could resemble a bacterial smear from a petting zoo. Ever tried to process the reality that you could be dining on stew made from mystery meat? Well, buckle up, because peasant culinary traditions just swept into the elite with all the grace of a drunk bird. Across the long table, swans roast softly, stuffed with the finest breadcrumbs and seasoned with herbs your grandmother believed were mythical. No one knows where those herbs came from, but if it ends with your neighbour twitching after a bite, you might want to re-evaluate your dining companions. Your eyes scan the buffet-like display resembling a feast meant for a king, or a bad horror movie. Yet everyone seems to lounge in blissful ignorance as they twirl their forks, laughing as if that barely weathered fish on your plate doesn't have a history worthy of a tragedy. Meanwhile, a young servant carries a tray of fruit so perfectly arranged that they seem more like decorations than food. But be careful. They could have been procured from the Duke's orchard, where squirrels once feasted like tiny furry bandits while gossiping about the latest court scandal. You handle that apple like it's the Holy Grail. It could be delicious, or it could transform your evening into the world's fanciest game of will I survive the next 24 hours. The high stakes of your dinner interaction rival anything seen in gladiatorial sports. And then there's the bread. A crusty loaf that's possibly harder than your next-door neighbour's granite countertop. You hesitate to slice into it, fearing you might need a medieval chainsaw instead of a knife. One bite could be a dramatic event, pulling your jaw into a state of disbelief, and suddenly you're questioning your previous choices in life. As you chew, simply remember, the richer your bread, the lower your chance of survival. Let's take a moment to appreciate the drink. Wine, anyone, rings louder than the clinking of forks. You glance at the waiter pouring, wondering how wine could be so cheap in a palace, while the peasants are left with dregs that might have taken a wrong turn into the sewer. And surprisingly, the wine is often celebrated for its variety. Each bottle held a deeper secret than the last hour spent listening to court gossip. You wonder if the cheap label is just a friendly title for the local vineyard known for giving anyone hallucinations about their own wedding to a swan. As salads drenched in dressings resembling melted furniture polish make their rounds, you contemplate where this madness ends. Do we throw a dance party after dinner to work off the post-dinner panic? Is there a special seating arrangement for the lords and ladies so that one rogue grape doesn't start a food fight among nobles? As whole oysters traverse from plate to plate, you watch the delighted faces of dukes and duchesses, their bejewelled laughter cutting through the horror. They have no idea what's in season, yet they feast upon the wonders of anything that squeaks or swims, all while pretending it's a privilege. In this banquet of the bizarre, your stomach tightens nervously. You remind yourself that you are technically not in a restaurant but a homeland of decadence, where indulgence reigns. Dinner is simply a competition of who can eat this disaster while maintaining the facade of sophistication. As swans groan under the weight of their improbability, you can't help but learn one final lesson. In the world of French nobility, the real skill isn't just surviving dinner, it's making sure everyone thinks you're enjoying the ride while secretly dreading each bite. So here's to the culinary chaos of Versailles. While you pray that whatever you inhaled didn't contain a hint of poison, turn the page to food traditions filled with intrigue, all served on a silver platter. Because in a place where everything is decadent, the only sin is an empty plate, or worse yet, leaving too soon before the dessert is revealed, an adventure unto itself. Bathing is a novel concept here, much like understanding basic social cues among the nobility. With bathtub time resembling something akin to a public performance art piece, you can only imagine the gossip that could arise if anyone discovered you believe in regular hygiene over fashionable grime. Do you chance a dip in the shared tub or play the role of the just too precious to scrub aristocrat? Ah, the sheer spectacle of bathing. In Versailles, even the most mundane rituals are draped in extravagance. Your average noble does not simply bathe, they host a full-blown event complete with audience participation and a running commentary from the servants. The Grand Tub, a majestic contraption resembling a pirate ship more than a bathtub, is filled with water that is perhaps fresher than the air around it, which is saying something. But not fresher than that plate of mouldy pastries lying around since last season. Who knew mould had a season? As you dip a toe into this communal cauldron of questionable water, you can feel the weight of centuries-old seaweed lingering beneath you. Welcome to the bath, where each splash threatens to unleash the most dangerous of rumours. Do you dare laugh too loudly? Heaven forbid you accidentally announce that you prefer the scent of clean linen over the so-called essence d'ancien soc, the local aristocratic favourite. The clinking of goblets filled with champagne fills the air as nearby attendees raise eyebrows higher than their powdered wigs, wondering if today is the day you decide to break the mould and actually clean up. Caught between societal standards and hygienic desires, you find yourself torn. On one hand, what sort of noble doesn't drink from the same cup as their neighbours, right? On the other hand, the water is suspiciously murky, more cloudy with a chance of meatballs than refreshing oasis. As your back slides into the murky water, you sigh, half hoping for a cleansing and half wishing for a quick escape before someone remarks on the state of your elbow grease, lack thereof. Imagine, instead of a spongy loofah and aromatic oils, you're handed a rough cloth resembling an ancient ship's sail that was perhaps mistaken for a towel. A few polite rub-downs with this relic in front of a dozen onlookers, and yes, they are all definitely judging, rarely leads to anything resembling clean. Instead, you leave the experience feeling like a soggy feather boa with delusions of cleanliness. Gossip has its own finely honed etiquette as well. "Did you hear?" whispers Lady Lefroux, drawing closer to her comrade. "I swear she came into the bath wearing the same gown she wore to court last week. You know, without washing it. Now that is true commitment to fashion." You stifle a chuckle. Who knew bathing could double as a runway for the latest gossip? Worse yet, should you make eye contact or laugh too hard, you risk slipping into the depths of scandal, where ladies reportedly bathe in fuller dips of shame than warm water. Just as you acclimate to the disarray of polite society layered in filth, someone points out that stepping out of the bathtub may be even trickier than getting in. It would appear hat hair is the least of your concerns as you attempt to balance on the slippery edge, encumbered by an array of damp lace and silk that fought its way into the large tub with you. With a swift twist of the ankle, you slip, suddenly realizing this is not the retreat to hygiene you thought it would be. Instead, it's a stage for a comedy of errors, a ballet on the brink of disaster no opera house would approve. Emerging from this avoidable fiasco isn't just about rinsing off, but trying to salvage your dignity, at least for the 10 minutes before someone catches whiff of your, shall we say, inner musk. Bathing in Versailles seems to be less about freshness and more a competitive game of who can endure the most discomfort in the name of luxury. And just like that, you're left battling the paradox of aromatic elegance versus legendary filth, alongside a whole palace full of people equally entangled in the fingerfoils of fate. Eventually you ponder if perhaps your status can remain intact by letting the scent of frankincense waft through the air while you decide to forgo bathing altogether. Think, I'm too refined for basic hygiene. With a smile, you settle back like the royal aristocrat you are, ignoring the fact that half the room saw you flail and flop in that ridiculous tub. After all, what's a little filth among friends when dignity hangs precariously from every wig? Evenings in Versailles are meant for dazzling distractions, whether it's a bizarre puppet show or your friend's ongoing rivalry with the court's jester. Spoiler alert, the jester wins every time. But in this high-stakes realm of entertainment, one misstep might lead to unintended consequences or a surprise cameo by the king crying laughter, or worse, disinterest. The theatre of Versailles is not just a stage, it's a battleground of wits, where laughter can quickly turn to scandal, and applause may come with a side of judgment. You stroll through the opulent hallways adorned with mirrors that reflect not just your face, but your questionable taste in attire. The air is thick with anticipation, laughter, and the scent of whatever fish paste just went out of style. As you enter the grand ballroom, you find an assortment of nobles crammed into tightly laced corsets, their wigs towering like skyscrapers. Wonderful? Yes. Comfortable? Absolutely not. You clutch your stomach, unsure whether it's the excitement or the 8 courses from dinner making you question your life choices. Suddenly there's a commotion. A drunken noble inadvertently steps on the hem of a lady's gown and sends a cascade of powder flying from her massive wig, blanketing everyone in the immediate vicinity like an unexpected snowstorm of flour. Cries of "Mon Dieu" echo off the walls, and you pause for a moment, surprised that someone hasn't already fainted at the sheer insolence of it all. Would this kind of absurdity be happening without the grand ambiance of Versailles? You highly doubt it. As laughter ripples through the crowd, you can't help but think this is a game where social status is a currency and humour a sharp weapon. The jester, meanwhile, is capitalising on the moment. He takes a triumphant leap, somersaulting through the air. Plot twist. He lands directly in the punch bowl. More cries of shock. What could possibly happen next? You mentally prepare to dial up your best face of innocent bewilderment as he emerges, dripping in a mix of spirits and indignity. You find yourself pondering whether you should help him or commend him for his commitment to the show. Is there a lesson here about the true cost of artistry? Throughout the evening you navigate through bizarre acts that seem to pop up like jarring Easter eggs in a horror film. There's a dramatic reenactment of last week's popular soap opera about love triangles and lost fortunes. Will that one noble ever realise he's been courting the wrong lady who's secretly a witch? Probably not. But who cares when everyone's so riled up about the lavish spectacle of it all? You're treated to a slice of life that you're constantly questioning. Is this high society, or just a very elaborate circus, complete with clowns who wear too much rouge? With the jesters' antics lighting up every corner of the ballroom, you find obliging nobles clenching their sides from laughter. One noblewoman boldly stands up, taking it upon herself to start a round of strumpet songs that quickly devolve into a contest of improvised lyrics. How could you forget the last verse that ended with, "As I prance through the fields, I stub my toe on a pig"? The hilarity is infectious, surely invoking the wrath of the court's moral purists, who faint at the slightest shade of impropriety. But who needs dignity when there are pig stubs to sing about? Yet, just as another uproarious reenactment begins, this one promising to feature a tragic hero, an unfortunate chicken, and a lost necklace, the doors burst open, and in strides a royal announcement that throws a shadow over the light-heartedness. A witty quip about the king's unfortunate haircut runs the risk of turning from the entertaining to the deadly serious. The room stirs anxiously as people try to gauge how far removed they are from the king's disfavour. Cue dramatic music because the stakes just skyrocketed. Watching your fellow nobles squirm, you can't help but stifle laughter. In this strange palace, you realise that life, like the evening's entertainment, is full of surprises, not just of the joyous kind, but also of those that promise fallout, revelations, and maybe a little bit of royal wrath. You hang back and wonder if perhaps the biggest thrill of all is simply surviving the night without becoming the next punchline. In a place like Versailles, the real entertainment may not always be on stage. Sometimes it's simply navigating the minefield of courtly life, where humour reigns supreme and laughter can be more dangerous than a battle with swords. Enter the courtyard, where a ballet of noble chaos unfolds. Swirling skirts and flailing arms create a mesmerising display, until someone trips, sending a line of powdered wigs tumbling. What's more mortifying, losing a dance-off or the fabric of your finest silk dress? Spoilers, it depends on who's watching. Now imagine this being the grand event of the summer, the ball of inexplicable awkwardness, where nobles come not just to dance but to engage in a performance that would put any theatre troupe to shame. The music starts, a harpsichord's crisp notes ricocheting off the marble columns like overly caffeinated squirrels, and instantly the air thickens with expectation. As you watch, men strut across the courtyard, adjusting their powdered wigs with the precision of a peacocking peacock. The ladies are equally committed to the spectacle, their gowns so wide they could double as small parachutes. You half expect one to catch a gust of wind and take off like a Renaissance-era kite, leaving behind a scandalised crowd shouting, "Is that how we do things in Paris now?" Suddenly a couple takes the stage, and it's less elegant waltz and more interpretive fight with unfamiliar dance moves. You know, the kind that would earn you disapproving looks from even the meanest of ballet instructors. A man, in what can only be described as a flourish of desperate grasping, tries to twirl his partner, and you can't help but wonder, how many people practice this move in front of a mirror until their spouses question their sanity? As their feet get tangled, you can hear the audience collectively holding their breath. Will it be a triumphant spin or a spectacularly awkward fall? It ends with a hearty thud and a shower of lace as the lady's headpiece makes a break for freedom and hits the ground with a satisfying flop. As she regains her balance, eyes wide with indignation, you can practically see her heart rate go up. The crowd erupts in laughter, not unkind but definitely loud enough to cause her cheeks to match her dress. Isn't that the point of these grand gatherings after all? To watch someone else's misfortune so closely it feels like a shared triumph over their dignity. Ah, the camaraderie of the upper crust. Meanwhile, the hosts clutch their pearls in exaggerated horror. The host, a stout nobleman whose waistcoat is more frayed than fashionable, leans closer to hiss, "This is why we can't have nice things." You briefly ponder the wisdom in that, considering that their idea of a good time closely mirrors a crowded circus with fewer clowns and much more fabric. But as the music resumes, the atmosphere shifts from embarrassment to exuberance. Nobles whisk their partners onto the dance floor, hearts racing and spirits soaring, the air filled with laughter and a hint of bad perfume. You can't help but notice how the crowd suddenly transforms. One minute, it's a scene pulled from a tragicomedy, and the next, each noble is either Josephine or Napoleon, fueled by the dual propellers of power and pride. And while you initially assumed stepping into the ball at Versailles would feel like stepping into a fairy tale, you quickly realise it's more akin to stepping into a flamboyant circus act where everyone is juggling their own absurdities and dreading the act of dropping a ball. You think about how hilariously absurd it is. With the next dizzying spin, the lady in the blue gown more closely resembles a flailing squid clad in silk, as you ponder how many times someone can almost trip over their own train before it becomes a choreographed masterpiece. Then, just as the giggles begin to die down, a gentleman stumbles into the scene, fair-skinned and bright-eyed at the swirling chaos. With a glint of mischief in his eye, he joins the fray to the delight of onlookers. His dance is less refined and more considerably chaotic. Think untrained bulldog attempting the tango, which, to your amusement, seems to bring more laughter than any of the practiced twirls that came before him. He's clearly not aware of the velvet rope sewn to the expectations of nobility. As the sun begins to set, casting a golden hue over the gathered spectacle, the twists and turns of the day's misadventures morph into stories that the nobles will undoubtedly carry back to their opulent homes, plastered in finery that is equal parts glamour and ridiculousness. Ah, but how beautifully they will tell the stories of the ball of inexplicable awkwardness, an evening where powdered wigs toppled, skirts flared, and laughter overthrew the tension of societal norms. As the night draws to a close, one thing is clear. This bizarre yet intoxicating ballet is not merely about elegance. It's about resilience, about taking the unexpected blunders of life and spinning them into delight. All the golden-lit moments captured, a fleeting insight into the human experience, even amidst the ridiculous grandeur of a fabulous French courtyard at dusk. All in a day's dance at Versailles, where laughter reigns supreme, and powdered wigs, despite their servitude to gravity, continue to bring that extra flair to life's most absurd moments. The noble court is a kaleidoscope of style, but if you miscalculate the colour scheme, your evening might unintentionally turn into a daytime disaster. Ever seen someone faint just because they match their shoes to a thimble? Welcome to the world of Versailles, where a combo of colours gets people kicked out faster than you can say, "Those shoes are so last season." Here, fashion is not just about looking good. It's a high-stakes game of survival, where one wrong turn can leave you as the laughingstock of the palace, a fate worse than being run over by a rogue carriage on a cobblestone road. As you stroll through the extravagant halls, your eyes are assaulted by a flurry of silk, lace, and feathers, all so dazzling they could make a peacock rethink its life choices. But don't be fooled. Beneath this opulent facade is a minefield of unwritten rules. When it comes to mixing and matching fabrics, think of it as a carefully choreographed ballet. One wrong step and you could find yourself in a fashion faux pas that sends shockwaves through the court. That young lady over there? She's about to be the talk of the evening. Not for her wit, but for having a dress 2 shades too bright for the season. "Who does she think she is?" you overhear an elderly lady whisper with a haughty flip of her fan. The irony isn't lost on you. Wasn't this the same lady who pranced around last week in an outfit that could only be described as butter-scented tart? Fashion snobbery reigns supreme in Versailles, and you can almost hear the collective gasp as someone walks in wearing slacks instead of breeches. Gasp! A bold statement indeed. Now let's talk accessories. Here, an inappropriate brooch could signal the end of the friendship faster than you can hide under the nearest gilded table. Did your dear friend lend you that diamond-encrusted necklace? Adorable! But make sure it's not from the royal collection unless you're prepared for accusations of treason. One lady found herself escorted out of a ball simply for wearing what she claimed was just a little something I found under the couch. Too bad it was the Queen's lost heirloom. Over at the corner, you catch sight of a handsome gentleman donning a magnificent cravat, the fabric so intricately tied it could rival a Rubik's Cube in complexity. As he glides across the marble floor, you can't help but admire his confidence, until a spare thread snaps, and just like that his cravat unravels like an overcooked spaghetti noodle. What ensues is a delightful display of scrambling embarrassment as he fumbles to retie the wretched accessory. You almost feel bad for him until you realise his great misfortune has made you feel infinitely better about your own attire. As the night unfolds, the importance of footwear becomes crystal clear. Those towering heels on that poor noblewoman aren't just painful. They're an epic high-wire act. You watch in awe as she triples in height, with every wobble her attention diverted from conversation to the sheer terror of standing upright. And just when you think she might be saved, she takes a daring step, all to bring her flamboyant shoe to the spotlight, only to find herself 2 steps away from losing her balance and gaining a one-way ticket to Oopsville. The gathered lords and ladies wince in unison, as if the entire hall is holding its breath. Then there's the matter of undergarments, because what's a royal court without layers of discomfort? If the corset doesn't squeeze out your lunch, the pantaloons will make you wish for a time machine. You try your best to ignore the muffled exclamations and awkward shifting of aristocrats who clearly swallowed their pride, and maybe a dozen pastries too many at dessert. You watch as they attempt to engage in courtly discourse, while their undergarments wage a most uncomfortable battle beneath their silks and laces. At the end of the night, as you hold your breath waiting for the inevitable judgments to roll out, one impactful realization hits you. It's not just clothes that matter in Versailles, it's the stories they tell. The laughter, humiliation and triumphs while navigating this decadent maze create a tapestry richer than any dress. It's an intricate blend of artistry, social intrigue and fashion faux pas that would put even the most ambitious runway show to shame. So raise a glass to your fellow nobles who dare to don, and sometimes miss, the very strangest fashions of the time. Because if anything, they make surviving in this vibrant world a tad more amusing. As you stroll out of the ball, you consider the etiquette rules you'll be breaking for the rest of the night. Colour combinations? Bah! You're ready to don what truly reflects your identity, even if it's decidedly out of style. Let the fashion police come. After all, true nobility goes hand in hand with the courage to wear your amusingly mismatched outfit like a badge of honour. The underlying tension thickens as you overhear whispers of the king, rumoured to be engaging in this latest scandal. And no, it's not the usual affair shenanigans. A misshapen pastry could send a courtier to the gallows faster than you can pencil a note on a napkin. Who knew being rich also meant being in perpetual danger of dessert decisions? As you sip your lukewarm chocolate, the laughter around you takes on an edge, and you can't help but wonder if you'll soon be swept up in this pastry debacle. Isn't it a wild thought that a single piece of croissant could cause more political unrest than a minor skirmish? Panic spreads through the room like the aroma of a newly baked tart, and soon you find yourself stifling a chuckle. Right in front of you, the Duchess of Dunderhead is detailing how the king's latest culinary faux pas involved attempting to impress his mistress with a soufflé that spontaneously combusted. It turns out the poor pastry chef is now seeking refuge in a neighbouring kingdom. You lean in closer, half expecting to hear that they've already sent out a royal decree to hunt him down like a lion after its lunch. Who would have the audacity to create a dish that could put your very head on a platter? "Did you hear what happened to Baron Turtledove?" a voice whispers conspiratorially from behind the velvet drapery. You can't help but gasp. The anticipation is almost more delicious than the chocolate. Apparently, Turtledove was put on dessert duty at a royal feast and took it too literally. Instead of the expected sweet, he concocted a nutmeg and honey crime against humanity. A pudding so revolting it toppled the dining table and managed to cushion the fall of a snooty noblewoman. Thanks to that pudding, the Baron found himself on the losing side of more than just a dessert competition. A round of laughter erupts, and you can't help but join in, imagining the vision Turtledove must have been, cringing under the weight of accumulated scandal and humiliation, flanked by stale pastries that could make even the hardiest peasant weep. The crowd may find rhythm in the laughter, but one or two sharp eyes catch onto your amused expression, and suddenly you recall that even humour can be misinterpreted as blasphemy in this gaudy court. As you glance around, you realise that the courtiers don't merely function on laughter, they thrive on it. The air is thick with tension, laughter interlaced with unspoken animosities. One misstep, one ill-timed joke about the king's latest flavour disaster, and you could find yourself in the stocks. Here, jesters and jesting cross the fine line between your saviour and executioner. Careful indeed, lest your own humour backfire like a poorly aimed cannonball at the royal palace wrestling matches. And there's always the risk of offending some dim-witted duke whose primary interest is bragging rights over the rest of the nobility. It's a social web as tangled as the freshly spooled silks the king's seamstress deftly navigates daily. You sit back and listen carefully. Everyone here is a mastermind in the art of the backstab, concocting rumours as easily as the servants whip cream into peaks worthy of a painting. "Cursed be his sweet tooth," the lace-laden Lady Fumblefingers declares, taking another sip of what you assume is liquid courage. "It shall be the end of us all." The giddy disposition is poorly masked by the hint of dread. The idea that the king might lose a slice of favour over cake leaves everyone overreacting with deliciously dramatic flair. You can just imagine the royal family motto inscribed on a bowl of sponge cake. No cake, no crown, reverberating through the halls. The drama builds until someone shouts for a toast to the king's culinary courage. All raise their glasses, but you curiously scan the crowd for a glimmer of betrayal hidden behind the cream. What if one of these chefs mistook the royal soufflé for rat droppings? Surely they'd be serving heads on behalf of their pastries before dessert arrives. You secretly ponder how far removed this all would be from your reality. What happened to the days when dessert was just meant to be savoured, not schemed over? It seems in Versailles, even confectionery can lead to revolution. With eyes wide, ears pricked for the next delectable outrage, you can't escape the feeling that you're part of a great opera, where the next act is but a poorly timed soufflé away. In the kingdom of mischief and macarons, you realise you are but a player in the most extravagant comedy of errors that could rival the writings of Molière himself. So let the royal pots clatter, and may the whispers swell. In this world of endless whimsy, who knows what tomorrow's impending pastry crisis may bring? You've got an invitation to a coronation. Of course, things take a turn when the crown is heavier than a toddler and less customizable than a medieval phone case. The coronation turns into chaos, and just as you prepare yourself for grandeur, A single sneeze leaves you wondering if you should join the ranks of nobles laughing or hide behind that very large plant. Trust me, you're not the only one straining under the weight of expectations, as the opulence of the palace began to turn more chaotic than a toddler's birthday party in the presence of a piñata. As you shuffle past rows of elaborately dressed nobles, the kind whose powdered wigs resemble small farm animals, it quickly becomes apparent that the delicate balance between elegance and absurdity is as precarious as a juggler on stilts. The atmosphere is electric, with nobles proudly mingling, adjusting their lace cuffs and practicing their surprised expressions for the cameras, also known as the court painters, permanently armed with brushes and desperately trying to portray glamour above all. If you glance sideways, you catch a glimpse of an overly enthusiastic baroness trying to ladle wine into a goblet while balancing a plume from her hat, almost causing a small wave of chaos with every exaggerated gesture. But wait, we aren't here to sip fancy grape juice while pretending to be important in silence. Suddenly someone yells, "Look out!" and the room shifts into slow motion as you see a plate of roast swan, complete with garnish, launch from one of the buffet tables like a culinary torpedo directly toward the royal family. Who knew such a stuffed bird could glide with such grace? It hits the floor with a resounding splat, releasing a cascade of sauce reminiscent of your last failed attempt at gravy making, which of course earns gasps and snickers from the surrounding crowd. The elderly duke spills his wine all over himself in the commotion, turning his regal attire into an avant-garde abstract art piece. Amid the gourmet carnage, you start suspecting that this whole coronation is less about dignity and more about who can keep a straight face through the shenanigans. Just when you thought it couldn't get any crazier, the royal trumpeters begin a rousing fanfare, but one of them over-enthusiastically splats their lips against the trumpet, resulting in a sound not unlike a dying goose caught in a revolving door. As the echoes of that sound fill the air, the crowd's expressions range from horror to barely suppressed giggles. The perfect recipe for disaster in any coronation, if you ask me. In the midst of it all, you find yourself clutching your own goblet, half filled with questionable wine from the neighbouring table. Seriously, the colour is more grape shame than grape wonder. Just as you begin to think that this wild scene is going to remain indelibly stamped on your mind, the newly crowned monarch steps up, balancing a crown perched atop their head as if it were a precarious fruitcake on a unicycle. You can see the nerves in their eyes. Are they feeling the weight of responsibility? Or is it just that monstrosity of heirloom pearls threatening to fall? As the ceremony continues, the local jesters take the opportunity to entertain, which basically means pulling off their best parlour tricks and prancing around. One even attempts to juggle, not objects, but the first aristocrat who dared suggest that the royal diet could include anything local and edible. The daring act leads to shrieks of laughter, which quickly morph into cries of panic as the court guards inadvertently tumble from their posts in an attempt to keep the humour intact. You can't help but think these poor soldiers may require a more steadfast strategy than hurried attempts to remain dignified while sporting gold-embroidered waistcoats. And then it happens. The winds shift. A single, gentle breeze whispers through the grand hall, as if the universe commands a sudden, chaotic epiphany. Suddenly, hats begin to fly off heads, cascading like a fuzzy meteor shower that's oddly accompanied by a chorus of nobles exclaiming theatrical, "Oh noes! And not my $5,000 wig!" As you stand there, frozen between feigned decorum and uncontrollable laughter, the reality sinks in. You're part of it, a participant in the hilarity laced within a royal affair that's become a grand comedy of manners, albeit unwittingly. Will you embrace the absurdity, or try to maintain that dignified, noble royal persona? The coronation descends into joyful bedlam, and all you can think is, who knew that an ordinary royal event could turn into the most spectacular carnival of chaos since the invention of wigs? With a smirk tugging at your lips and wine sloshing in your goblet, you join the noble ranks in laughter. After all, what's more regal than pulling together through the delightful madness of history? Watching a duel unfold is more entertaining than the most far-fetched soap opera. With swords crossed and hearts racing, you get lost in the anticipation until someone inevitably trips over their own elaborate coat. Will style, dignity and proper stance get abandoned in favour of comedic gold? Spoiler, yes. And now you just might host the world's first Battle of the Clumsies. In the grand courtyard of Versailles, the tension in the air is so thick you could slice it with a rapier. Though let's face it, the swords are probably more likely to get tangled in petticoats. As the duelists step into the ring, you can't help but think this is not exactly how the knights of old envisioned chivalry. One guardsman, sporting a wig so tall you'd think it had its own zip code, adjusts his grip on the hilt of his sword while trying to balance a feather plume on top. Dueling etiquette demands honour and restraint, but all you can think about is the very real danger of that plume taking flight and smacking an innocent bystander. The crowd gathers, equally poised for drama and hilarity, resembling an audience at a theatre's opening night, but only if the actors had stinky feet and questionable personal hygiene. "En garde," they shout, which roughly translates to, "We're about to lose our dignity." The first flick of their blades pierces the silence. A round of gasps and murmurs ripples through the crowd, punctuated by the occasional giggles of onlookers too eager to catch the next great blunder. It's a comedy of manners, where the stakes are entirely lost on anyone in attendance other than the duelling parties. Is it really about honour, or just an embarrassing way to settle a dispute over who wore the better silk necktie at the last soirée? The first collision of blades sounds impressive, until it's abruptly followed by a loud thud. Yes, one poor soul, fully committed to a grand lunge, plunges forward, only to trip over his own ludicrously long shoelace. The duelists fumble about, awkwardly pretending to be serious warriors while simultaneously shielding their giggles. You can practically hear the collective thought from the audience. Is this a duel or a bad ballet performance? And then, at that pivotal moment of sheer ridiculousness, someone decides to protect their virtue and interjects with, "Ahem, duelists, kindly remember, this is a matter of life and death." Life and death? Or is it a matter of who bites the dust more elegantly? Right then, the aristocrats of France would rather part with their reputations than their swords, and it becomes abundantly clear that every slice and thrust is more about maintaining a facade than actual combat. Next comes the infamous mildly brave move where one of the duelists, overly confident after a successful parry, decides to show off. As he whirls around to strike a pose for the audience, everyone collectively holds their breath, and you can just picture the scenario playing out like a slow-motion slapstick reel. And wouldn't you know it, another unfortunate noble, apparently holding on to a treasure chest full of pastels, finds his footing precarious, flails to the side, and collides headfirst into the nearest flower basket. Petals explode everywhere, offering a riotous colour contrast to the fine court attire. But amidst the laughter, things do turn serious for a heartbeat. A sudden uptick in tension grips the crowd as the duelist's blades take on a toothsome glint, mirroring the glitzy surroundings. Swords are not just weapons here, they are symbols of wealth, style and identity. At play is more than just a foolish spat. A lingering rivalry could impact social standing for years to come. When reputations are at stake, who needs honour anyway? As they step back, swords held precariously too close to the elaborate wigs, You can't help but think this whole endeavour could double as an unintentional hairdressing demonstration. With each dramatic flourish of their swords, the duelists leap about, hitting high notes of both an artful balletic performance and a true duel of wills. Glancing around the merely mortal crowd, you search for the glimmers of awe before noticing one lady chuckling in the back, wine splattered upon her bodice. Who knew that the grace of nobility might not withstand the clumsiness of life? When finally the duellers pause to take a breather, clumsiness, combat, and the looming threat of spilled wine hanging in the air, there comes the inevitable question your inner noble longs to ask. Who will leave with honour, and who will be the punchline of the evening's pomp? And just like that, you're reminded that even here, within the gilded halls of excess, the human experience thrives on the absurd. Mistakes become tales for laughter, and clattering swords echo through history, reminding you that all's fair in love and war, even if your heart's no longer in it, as long as you're still standing in good standing with the latest gossip. The noble class thrives on petty rivalries just as much as opulence. You've got people dropping jabs about dress lengths and redecorating their dining rooms without so much as an invitation. Can you survive the whispered barbs during a tea party without rolling your eyes so loudly that they echo back? Picture yourself at an extravagant soiree. You're seamlessly draped in silk and surrounded by an ensemble of brightly coloured wigs, bobbing junto to exaggerated laughter. Unfortunately, beneath the glittering facade lurks a thick atmosphere of tension thicker than a pot of overcooked porridge. As soon as the tea is poured, the battle of wits begins. I simply cannot fathom how Lady Margaret thought that shade of blue was appropriate for the spring gala, one lady huffs, clearly in favour of a more zealous palette reminiscent of the setting sun. You nod as she takes a sip of tea, but inwardly you're cringing. How does anyone measure shades of blue in a room full of egos the size of blimps? Before you can even process the amount of jelly on your scone, another noble swoops in, armed with barbs sharper than a finely honed porcelain shard. Oh dear, did you hear the news about the Count and Countess of Dovetail? Apparently their marriage has taken a turn. He's taken quite a liking to gardening. She snickers. You can't help but feel a glimmer of sympathy for the Count, who clearly has a penchant for not just food, but also bloom. Did this aristocrat not realise that talking about gardening was a code word for an affair? But the rivalries don't merely dwell in matters of taste or affection. They can manifest in bewilderingly competitive ways. Take the art of hosting tea parties, for example. One noble lord, envious of another's sprawling estate, meticulously plans an afternoon gathering with the sole purpose of outshining his neighbour. His pastry chef has been tasked with creating the most intricate pastries the world has ever seen, while you wonder how those pastries can resemble miniature castles and yet still taste like sweetened cardboard. Is for show or for food? Which royal artisan needs a talking to today? You glance over to watch as a perpetual frown settles on Lady Beatrice's features upon arriving to find your cane chair positioned at a prime location. You didn't know that claiming the best seat was a life-or-death battle for them. She scoffs, already conjuring a disdainful compliment about the decor that blends eras like a poorly mixed cocktail. Her hat, a wonder of broad-brimmed disaster, shudders in exasperation. What fresh drama are you witnessing in this hotbed of rivalry? Perhaps she should have prioritised a sturdy hat over her biting wit. And just when you think you've managed to navigate the social traps, someone mentions a new musician spotted near the market. Immediately, discussions of musical taste devolve into passionate arguments over who deserves to host the next concert at their estate. The very fabric of friendship unravelled in mere seconds. "Oh, but dear, we know how you feel about the loot," a rival comments ever so sweetly, coated with sarcasm like a hollow sugar dusting. You suppress a laugh that almost distracts those caught in the crossfire of names being hurled about like confetti. Perhaps Lady Beatrice once held the position of lute connoisseur, a title she certainly earned through countless passionate debates. Evidently, she's amassed intel on every lute in the kingdom, knowing more notes than the village choir. You hear her loudly declare the importance of a real lute, while simultaneously converting one of her friends into a Liszt fan, and you can't help but be swept into the enigma of who these individuals are pretending to be. As the afternoon meanders on, tea sips transform into flutes of champagne, amplifying the already overflowing competitiveness. Table etiquette. Considered by the wayside, between dagger-like looks and flourishy gestures, it seems you're attending not so much a tea party, but an Olympic event in social acrobatics. Will there be gold medals awarded for best backhanded compliment or fiercest side-eye? By the time the clock strikes too late to consider bloated egos, you realise that managing this labyrinth of rivalry requires more strategy than a full-on court battle. Yet somehow, as cabals of nobles disperse into the night, you feel the adrenaline course through your veins. You may have spent the afternoon dodging barbs and feathers, but you've also survived, emerged unscathed. Among this crowd of competitive wit, perhaps there's a charm in the chaos. After all, even when disagreements explode chintzy decorum into discord, one cannot help but marvel at the art of rivalry, where laughs, whispers, and extravagant wigs intersect to create absolute opulence. So there you go. Amid the whispers of superiority and shows of ostentation, you've simply become a spectator in a wayward theatre of the elite, a world so vastly extravagant, unseen burrs of competitiveness serve less as stumbling blocks and more as humour-tinged stepping stones toward understanding just how surreal the aristocracy truly is. Once you enter the hunt, the question isn't so much about the game itself, but about which noble can accidentally ride over the other's prize pet from the carriage parade. Will feathers fly, or will you land squarely in a sticky gossip web just waiting to catch your escapades? The tension is thick enough to cut with a sword made from pure envy as you prepare to saddle up, with your fine silk riding attire being either the epitome of sophistication or an invitation for ridicule, depending on the onlookers. The horse you're mounting isn't just any steed. It's a creature groomed to perfection, likely bred in a scandalous breeding competition, sponsored by those who don't have enough hobbies. As you glance at your reflection in the quickly approaching pond, you catch the telltale frizz of your wig, the one escapee strand, wandering off like it's late for a grand ball. You can sense the whispers already. Did she just lose her wig? Or is that an avant-garde statement? Spoiler alert, it's probably a little bit of both. The hunt commences, and you trot alongside fellow nobles, all of you radiating an aura that screams entitlement louder than a peacock in mating season. Hounds bark as you ride through the lush surroundings, each appearance of nature meticulously moulded into a pastoral painting for your leisure. Or, should we say, it's a live interactive art piece where everyone has permission to yell, "Look at me," louder than the last noble, desperately vying for attention and respect while simultaneously holding back the urge to trip your rival with the reins of your steed. As the horns blare, signalling the start, you try to focus on the hunt itself, but that's like trying to ignore a banquet spread of pastries. Impossible. You can hear the excited chatter from all corners. Did you see Lord Pompous? He's finally wearing that ridiculous hat he saved for the crown inspection. And there's Lady Haughty over there, slightly red-faced from some unidentifiable source that dribbled onto her embroidered bodice. Fashion police ready to charge her with a crime against silk. The game is set forth. Wild boar, deer, and whatever woodland creature has misjudged the wrath of the nobility are your unfortunate targets for the day. But let's be real. What's more exhilarating than the hunt itself is what leads up to it. The race to catch the biggest animal isn't only for bragging rights, it also sets off a chain reaction of accusations, with the nobles posting their victories on their social media equivalent. Giant tapestries hung for all to see at the next soiree. Success at the hunt is often determined by who manages to ride the fastest, which essentially means everyone and their horse will experience temporary heart palpitations. At one point you catch a particularly aggressive, showy noble attempting to take a shortcut through the underbrush, and you can't help but wonder, is that a strategy, or has he just firmly planted his foot into the royal shoe of embarrassment? Because, spoiler alert, in the world of hunting nobles, shortcut is just a fancy term for, we'll be talking about this mishap for weeks. Before you know it, the very air is charged with a scent of musk and a chorus of disgruntled hounds. The thrill of being on horseback is quickly interrupted by an unexpected audience. A flurry of ballroom-attired ladies gathered by the bushes, their parasols raised, serving nothing less than royal judgment with an unspoken rule of how dare you hunt during tea time. One fateful slip, and you may be offering them stories of your prowess while tangled in your horse's reins. In true Versailles fashion, the hunt draws to a close, and whether you bag the biggest prize or merely tangled with the shrubbery, you can count on the gossip to flow like champagne at a mid-afternoon banquet. The intrigue isn't merely about who won or who lost, but who did so with the most pomp and circumstance worthy of a royal festival. As you ride back towards the palace, the reality washes over you. The only thing more relentless than the pursuit of game is the ferocious passion for gossip that thrives in the glittering halls of Versailles. If you somehow survived without being immortalised as the horseback fumbler, well done. Now hand the beast some carrots and gear up for the next round of non-stop gossip and high society trash talk. You'll need it to navigate another day among the nobles, as they revel in what it truly means to be a relentless spectacle that never fades from memory. Wandering into the cabinets filled with questionable curiosities feels more like a bizarre museum where every drawer holds secrets and stories you never asked for. How is that glass eye still functional? And why are taxidermied animals vying for your attention while you contemplate the nature of your bank account? Gardening the floors of the cabinet are delightful surprises. Stuffed frogs wearing tiny waistcoats, jars of botched pickles labelled in case of emergency, and something described as a rare fungus from the Indies. You can't help but wonder if this was intended as decor, or if someone believed it could ward off the evil spirits of uninvited neighbours. As you meander through this odd collection, it becomes clear. The true purpose of these cabinets is to distract from the fact that no one here actually knows how to engage with one another. You spot a bizarrely lifelike stuffed flamingo in an elaborate feathered headdress that could rival Marie Antoinette's own hair. Is that stroke of genius, or another attempt at keeping people guessing? The scene feels curated for maximum awkwardness, an antique eyesore designed to provoke more questions than answers. In the far corner, a large cabinet showcases strange tinctures and remedies. If the labels are to be believed, they promise to cure everything from constipation to the vapours, a condition that, as far as you can tell, might arise from simply existing in this time frame. You can already hear the whispers, "This potion will grant you immortality," and "only a goat's toenail away from perfect skin." A bold proclamation for something that smells suspiciously like pickled herring mixed with regret. You think to yourself, should I really trust this when the last time my skin got complimented was, never? Just as you're contemplating a late-night snack that seems like a great idea, or perhaps a bad one, fueled by the collective peer pressure of insatiable curiosity, you're approached by a lady draped in silk and intrigue, accompanied by what looks like a small dog dressed as a courtier. "Ah, I see you found my glass eye collection," she says while leaning in conspiratorially. "It's the perfect icebreaker for any soiree." You can't help but wonder if she encourages guests to try them on. Does she believe that experiencing life through the eyes of a stuffed squirrel could become a trendy social experiment? Before you can escape the treacherous terrain of small talk, she continues. This one, it belonged to a sea captain who famously lost his ship while navigating a particularly nasty storm. Did you know he drank only custard during the entire voyage? You nod blankly, wishing silently for a piece of crusty bread to chew and distract yourself from his diet of chaos. This is apparently the kind of conversation that charms patrons in Versailles. Custard, the taste of adventure, or would you prefer to lose your ship or your dignity? Next, you're distracted by an ornate box that resembles a birdcage holding an eclectic assortment of unidentifiable artifacts. Carefully you open it, only to reveal a jar purportedly containing a vampire fang from Transylvania. They say that true aristocrats collect oddities for their social clout, but you're swiftly realizing you'd rather have a good book and a cup of tea than whatever undead horror this jar insinuates about your personality. Even amidst this bizarre cabinet of curiosities, with all its exciting but slightly nauseating discoveries, you start to wonder what it says about you, that you'd rather learn about the marshy quagmire of your personal bank account than try to explain why you actually did rub elbows with a very fuzzy mannequin when trying to mingle at last night's ball. Every item seems to culminate in a curiously glum reflection. What makes you happy? Is it surrounded by the frame of these stuffed wonders, or the lavish ball where fashion inspires silent jealousy? The answer isn't clear, but the oddities whisper. They remind you that the line between the wildly fantastic and unsettlingly grotesque is razor thin here in Versailles. As you finally back away from the cabinets, memories of the glass eye and flamboyant flamingos follow you like a séance of awkwardness. You wonder, who needs the pressures of humility when you could just raid a taxidermy cabinet for some inspirational nonsense? Just then, however, an awkwardly dressed gentleman spills a drink on himself while attempting to examine a very curious piece of preserved seaweed. Now, that's a conversation starter. You shake your head and chuckle to yourself, knowing that in this cabinet of curiosities, at least one thing remains unarguable. Laughter truly is the best remedy. As wakeful as your purse is at the moment, rumours of revolution are stirring just outside those gilded gates. Can you lift your fork without feeling the weight of history pressing down? Those who dined on sumptuous feasts must now consider that their bread may be replaced by rations, or worse, the disdain of the hungry mob just outside. You can almost hear the murmurs of discontent layered beneath the clinking of silverware, a symphony of opulence mixed with an undercurrent of unease, like a particularly invasive flute playing out of tune. Now imagine yourself seated at the grand dining table, a veritable feast spread before you. Delicate pastries shaped like swans, glistening roast duck bathed in an apricot glaze, and of course wine flowing as freely as the gossip. You take a moment to admire your plate, but the phantom scent of stale bread wafts through the air, and your mind drifts back to the impoverished souls beyond the castle walls who are left gnawing on the bones of yesterday's meals. It's a sticky, sweet irony, how the leftovers of the elite are discarded while the masses plead for sustenance that's barely bigger than a crumb. You can't help but wonder if this feast is only a temporary illusion. Is it possible that a single royal decree could turn your buttery brioche into a slice of stale regret? Suddenly, a troop of nobles bursts into laughter, their raucous joy juxtaposed against the sombre backdrop of hardship simmering just beyond Versailles. The jester, an expert in comedic timing, leans in, whispering exaggerated tales of rebellion with wild gesticulations that leave crumbs touching the floor like some sort of flamboyant post-battle decor. As he entertains, you ponder how ridiculous it would be to take him seriously. A revolution, you think. What is that compared to the perfect poached egg? But as his act goes on, and the laughter builds, you can see it in the faces around the table, the changing tides of fortune. You notice whispers of anxiety, furtive glances toward the windows lined with glinting glass, and the fearful twitch in the Grand Duke's eye as he scratches his chin, perhaps contemplating whether he should next invest in a moat or just an oversized pair of running shoes. Perhaps it's all for show, but that doesn't make the thought any less unnerving. Picture this. Outside the gates, men, women, and children are rallying together, their voices rising like a cacophony, a growing symphony of demands for food, rights, and a good reason to stop wearing those ghastly powdered wigs. Hiring a team of fancy tailors won't insulate the court from the reality that the ground is shifting beneath them. While you busy yourself adjusting your sleeve ruffles, the people's fists grow clenched in unison. Did the king really think that a few golden trinkets and dances in the moonlight would keep them pacified? You find yourself unwittingly sucked into the gossip circulating in the room, everyone trying to decipher the seriousness of the unrest. "I heard they're even wielding pitchforks now," a lady gasps, her eyes wide with disbelief. To you it almost sounds like an invitation to a dinner party gone wrong. The chatter escalates. Will they storm the palace? Will they ask for our pastries next? You ponder how no one seems genuinely worried about the ramifications of revolution, just the potential loss of their dessert. A sudden echo of a crash distracts you, sending a ripple of anxiety through the air as a drunken noble knocks over a candelabra, wax spilling like the hopes of the commoners ambitioning towards change. The horror on some faces suggests they've just witnessed a performance of royal absurdity. The moment is ripe with irony. Here you are feasting in bewildering ease while others await the inevitable implosion of decadence. But there's still time. You can feel it. That bubbling urgency beneath the fine silk and brocade, a nearly tangible tension like a souffle on the edge of deflation. Who knows what lurks beyond those gates? Is it a joke? A jest? Whispered rumours over pastries and clinking glasses? Or is it the real threat of upheaval stirring just beyond the gates of your glittering palace? And as the night deepens, laughter falters, and the sweet scent of ripe fruit suddenly turns pungent with the possibility of revolt, you come to a ghastly conclusion. It's not just the food that's at stake here, it's everything that lies within the fragile walls of this luxurious facade. Never has the phrase, "You can't make this up," felt so prescient as you survey the scene. Will it all come crumbling down like overcooked soufflés? How splendid it is that at such a moment you're on the inside, but for how long? The night is still young, and the whispers are only growing louder, echoing through the banquet hall with the venom of caution. How, oh how, will you skillfully navigate this dinner-table politics? And more pressing, who will end up with the last piece of cake once the world turns against its rotting peaches? Departures from court are never mild, with over-the-top pomp and enough handkerchief waving to rival a melodrama. Who knew saying goodbye could involve reenactments worthy of a dramatic opera? You find yourself swept away in the frenzy, waving like a royal, as if you were practicing for your own theoretical departure. The sights, sounds, and scents of Versailles suffuse the air, a dizzying cocktail of perfume, flowers, and just a hint of desperation as everyone tries to one-up each other in a farewell frenzy. As you navigate this emotional minefield, the room bursts with an array of characters. The sobbing lady in lavender crying about her pet gerbil, a stoic count who seems utterly unfazed by everyone else's theatrics, and the flirty baron whose dramatic farewell involves multiple bows and an unnecessary somersault. Someone shouts, "Don't forget to mind the hors d'oeuvres," and you can almost feel the collective gasp as trays of delicate pastries wobble precariously. Would it be too uncouth to admit you'd rather keep the dessert than hear the next instalment of Lady Pompous' sentimental tales of distant relatives? With a roll of your eyes, you attempt to look dignified, but inside you're bubbling like a pot of water that's just been placed on the stove. How did you get ensnared in this extravagant circus? All of Versailles seems determined to turn parting into an unparalleled spectacle, complete with fanfare, music, and maybe even a fire-breathing jester if you're lucky. You half expect someone to leap on top of the banquet table and call for a dramatic soliloquy. To travel or not to travel, that is the question. In this world, farewells are painted with a brush that embodies both whimsy and absurdity. When a noble sets sail, or simply ambles off to another room, it's as if they are embarking on a noble quest, destined to fight dragons and engage in epic battles, instead of just catching the next carriage to Maison-à-Sac. Do these folks really think that the act of departing makes them a tragic figure in a Shakespearean play? Get a grip! The players swirl around you, each vying to become the toast of the floor, hands fluttering in the air more dramatically than an old Broadway star struggling to deliver a monologue. Servants scurry around, filling goblets to the brim with wine of questionable aging, the kind of drink that could most accurately be described as fun for a night, but slightly regrettable for the morning. Naturally, there's a collective gasp as a lady faints. Of course, she's not actually fainting, it's all part of the act. The monks in the corner, who harbour an uncanny ability for crashing parties, watch with raised eyebrows and furrowed brows, suggesting that this level of extravagance is firmly in the realm of heresy. As you take part in this theatrical display, you can't help but wonder about the actual purpose of these grand send-offs. Is it to mourn the loss of a friend, or to generate enough gossip fodder to last until the next soirée? Isn't the moment someone declares, "Next time I'll visit you on the other side of the river," just another way of saying, "I can't be bothered. Your wines are officially terrible"? Versailles, where drama is currency and your ability to be over the top is rewarded with either applause or mockery. Finally, as the hour grows late and the drama reaches its zenith, you realise it's time to navigate your way out of this whirlpool of excess. As the handkerchiefs flutter and wails echo throughout the room, which would be heartwarming if it weren't so utterly self-indulgent, you find yourself yearning for a place where farewells aren't a dramatic performance. Maybe the next time you see a statue of someone in a powdered wig, they'll be waving goodbye, hopefully with a cheeky wink rather than an asthmatic wheeze, and you silently promise to rise to that occasion. It may be time to master the art of understated elegance, but for now, relish this sparkling ridiculousness. You've survived the farewell parade, and what a parade it was. Don't worry, the next round of bubbly drama is surely just around the corner. Everyone will be eager to make their next extravagant exit. In this world, wigs are less about hair and more about hierarchy. Each twist and turn of those elaborate hairstyles tells a story you never dared to ask about. Is that a free-range parrot perched precariously atop that head, or just a very ambitious fashion statement? One wig pass later and you're immersed in a living historical fashion show. Step carefully though. One misstep could send you tumbling into a tangle of cascading curls that require an apothecary just to manage. Just try untangling a wig full of secrets, lies, and perhaps a few half-eaten pastries from last week. As you walk through the opulent hallways of Versailles, wig-clad nobility seem almost afloat by you, their royal demeanour buoyed by layers of combed and powdered hair. That wig on Madame de Pompadour, a breathtaking confection of silk and feathers, flaunts not just style but an entire social order. No simple head of hair here. This is a crown, an emblem of status, and perhaps a statement piece louder than your Aunt Susan's collection of two-story flamingos in her front yard. In the world of Versailles, this is not merely a fashion choice but a declaration. I am here. Have you noticed me yet? But with great wigs comes great responsibility, especially when the winds of change start to whisper secrets of rebellion outside the palace gates. The higher the hairstyle, the closer to heaven, and conversely, the more elaborate the fall when the world decides it's time to turn upside down. Imagine clipped conversations peppered with complaints about how last night's ball hosted one too many rats traipsing above the chandeliers. You overhear whispers of powdered wigs rolling down the paths of history like tumbleweeds, losing their meaning in the parade of time. And those wigs, oh, the hairstyles, they're like emoticons of yore every time a noble wants to express themselves. The towering pompadours of Lady Chateaubriand declare, "I am not only rich but also slightly mad," while the simpler bobbed styles of those lower on the social scale suggest, "I'm too busy to care, and I probably forgot the pie is still in the oven." It's like a medieval pyramid scheme where haircut elevation determines your position. Unfortunately, one too many bad hair days could lead to a sudden drop from the top, much like losing your prized piece of truffle on the ballroom floor. Of course, wigs come with their own set of problems. For every glorious swell of hair sprouting artificially from a noble's head, there's a hidden air of dread that they could suddenly get caught in a gust of wind, or worse, the moment a sudden ballet pirouette goes terribly wrong. You watch in horror as the unsuspecting Lady Isabel swirls, and her wig meets the prying clutches of a lazy chandelier, the ensuing fight a touch of ancient slapstick comedy. What's more, every wig has a maintenance schedule that would put a full-time job to shame. An outfit might be completed in 2 hours, but one must prep for a hairdo that requires technicians akin to modern-day engineers. Picture a gaggle of hairdressers rolling in with baskets of beeswax, lace, feathers, and ladder-like contraptions to climb to lofty heights. And heaven forbid you are having a bad hair day in this era. A mere scratch could transform your ensemble from noble to rabid raccoon, and no one wants their wealth defined by rogue frizz. But, the magic of the wig truly lies in its ability to transform. One moment, you're just Marie, and suddenly with a judicious pilling of those curls, you're now Madame Gaspard, purveyor of lavender-infused nonsense, who somehow feels powerful enough to duel even the most iron-clad courtier. You realise every passionate speech, every court drama, and every emotional declaration, with a wig of ambition quotes, descends into the farce of unspoken treasures. So, as we step back from the artistry and absurdity of wigs in the dazzling world of Versailles, remind yourself that these towering hairstyles are, in essence, mirrors reflecting society's ever-shifting seams. Keep your ears open to the whispers of history woven in each strand. After all, behind every opulent wig is a knot of triumphs, tragedies, and a commitment to maintaining a sense of superiority in a society where every head is a stage and every wig is a tremendous act waiting for its bow. And who knows, perhaps you'll discover your own wig, a metaphorical piece of empowerment informing the world. I may wear a funny hat, but I own this room, and the world is mine. The chaos unfolds as artists gather in the salons, where high society discusses beauty, art, and the annoying habit of drawing profound comparisons to everything. If you thought painting landscapes was a quiet matter, prepare for emotional debates that could rattle your foundations, unless you can outwit the critics with a cup of stale coffee. And let's be honest, if you dare to sip that lukewarm brew while discussing the essence of colour, you might just start a techno-political revolution right there in the drawing room. Picture it. Crammed amongst silk-covered chairs, your fellow art enthusiasts toss around terms like Baroque, Rococo, and Rundown. A veritable cornucopia of opinions spills forth, where much discussion revolves around what makes a masterpiece. One esteemed noble might insist it's all about the delicate interplay of light and shadow, while another thrust their finger into the air, claiming offhandedly that true art can only exist if you can carry it to a nearby field and hunt with it. Is that a boast of painting prowess, or straightforward insanity? Who knows? The artworks themselves often become participants in their own reality show drama. Stiff portraits glare down from their frames, judging every drop of paint splattered across fresh canvases with all the moral superiority of a disgruntled aristocrat. "If you can't capture my essence in oil, darling, just toss the brush out the window," one nobleman declares, throwing his head back theatrically. You can almost hear the trepidation of the canvases whispering, "Please don't drop me, I still got a bit of varnish left." Bringing that chaotic energy to life is a team of visually arresting but mildly disgruntled artists, wielding paintbrushes like fencing swords in a duel of wits. Clad in voluminous capes that look one good gust of wind away from becoming airborne, they huddle together, dodging remarkably well-placed barbs regarding their last exhibition. "This piece," one artist scoffs, pointing to an eccentric stain of colour resembling the aftermath of a pie-eating contest. Or was it just an unfortunate incident with a berry tart? It's an avant-garde commentary on the transient nature of the elite lifestyle. What elites waste food like this? Even your morning pastry seems overly ambitious in that light. Meanwhile, the air sizzles with discussion on who's in vogue and who lost their touch faster than last season's silk fabric. A lady whispers excitedly about the latest scandal enveloping one artist whose mural won rave reviews, but was later discovered to have been inspired by their neighbour's untimely cow accident. "Only in Versailles," you murmur to yourself, trying to stifle a giggle as the drama unfolds in front of you. But it's not just petty conversations about someone else's culinary catastrophe. One artist launches into a fervent rant about societal inequality. Michelangelesque masterpieces are all well and good, they thunder, but when will we paint the reality of our peasants in all their miserable beauty? There's an audible gasp as a lady dramatically fans herself, a ruby glimmer from her jewellery catching the chandelier light. "Dare we evoke sympathy for those without gowns adorned in diamonds?" she huffs, horrified at the idea of portraying anything less than idealised wealth and splendour. The conversation shifts naturally, and suddenly someone is brandishing a fruit tart as if it were a lifeline of artistic expression. What do we think of this delightful treat? Isn't its richness divine? Is it not art itself? The room collectively gasps, dividing into factions of tart admirers and opponents who claim it's merely a pastry, not the Sistine Chapel. And as the chaos unfolds, you find solace behind your cup of coffee that, to your horror, has turned cold. Tensions and creativity bulge like an overstuffed pastry, while you contemplate your own relevance in the artistic melee. Are you there to join in the fray, or merely to bear witness? Should you ascribe to the philosophy that beauty emerges from chaos, or quietly point out the macaroon that looks a wee bit like a sad, deflated balloon? As the evening drags on, the salons echo with laughter, disputes, and an occasional, "Please, let's get back to paint." Reminiscing about those passionately painted discussions actually evokes genuine excitement. You realise you've stumbled into a different type of battle, one centred on creativity, perception, and absurdity. Who knew crafting beauty involved so much chaos? And yet, as the wild debates and the colourfully adorned company come to life before your eyes, you can't help but feel that every crazy moment only adds to the reputation of Versailles as a true palace of art. and a chaotic circus. As the sun dips low, you find it's cocktail hour, a suspiciously filling event filled with cures for ailments you didn't know you had. Witches brew potions and remedies, appealing to the nobility in ways that would shock even the most oblivious of souls. History's attempts at holistic remedies prepare for laughable disasters. Picture this. You're surrounded by elegantly dressed figures, each one nursing an elaborate glass brimming with mystery liquid that looks suspiciously like a swamp with added glitter. Is that a touch of frog's leg peeking from the surface? It's hard to tell when the host is waving around a freshly skinned apple and proclaiming it to be a cure for heartbreak. Yes, this is the world of 18th century Versailles, where science is as fanciful as one's imagination, and healing often means putting a flower in something and hoping for the best. You take a hesitant sip of a potion advertised as tonic for love sickness, which promptly tastes like the aftermath of a passionate cow encounter. You can't help but wonder what love sickness really means. Is it simply rejection, or could it be the side effect of such dubious brews? It's rumoured that the last noble who tried this particular concoction went on a 3-day rant about the virtues of pet goldfish. Hopefully they didn't also have to swim thrice around the royal fountain to cure their affliction, but that's not all. Beyond the Baroque decor, you spot Madame de Pompadour expounding her latest discovery, a paste made from crushed gemstones said to sharpen one's wits. A gentleman needs his wits about him, especially when dealing with a single clever woman, she exclaims, while dabbing it on her temples like a medieval makeup artist gone wild. In theory, you think, crushing diamonds and applying them to your forehead sounds great until you remember who could afford to buy diamonds and the ruinous hangover that would inevitably follow. As you wander deeper into the gathering, you overhear a gaggle of influential ladies exchanging horror stories. One recounts how her husband took a spoonful of honey mixed with a dash of toadstool and promptly turned an unattractive shade of green. "Darling," she chuckles. "It was an interesting evening, though I think he was merely trying to be fashionable." Ah, elixirs, salves and tonics of every imaginable origin. From dandelions to dubious animal organs, the ingredients sound like they were pulled from a witch's spellbook over a misinterpreted cookbook. Then, a fateful encounter. You find yourself approached by a well-meaning but slightly overzealous doctor, clad in a powdered wig that would put a peacock to shame. Breathlessly, he insists you must try a new miraculous remedy, a tincture made from the essence of unicorn horn mixed with dew collected at the break of dawn. His eyes glimmer with wild enthusiasm. It's both mesmerizing and mildly unsettling. You suppress a smile. Unicorn horn? Really? Haven't you heard that the last pair of boots he insisted were made from unicorn skin turned out to be rat leather? Just when you thought this afternoon of ailments couldn't get any more ridiculous, a nobleman stumbles in wearing slippers that would make a rabbit's foot seem practical. He lifts his glass, proudly announcing it's filled with the tears of mermaids. Inside, glimmering bubbles dance about in defiance to every single pearl in the room. Besides the fact that mermaids are supposedly mythical creatures, you can't quite grasp how one would even procure such a thing, unless you're peddling in really serious delusions. As laughter echoes through the courtyard, you find comfort in the company. Shared stupidity is the great equalizer, after all. You lean against a balcony railing, the sunset casting sparkling reflections on the ornate fountains below, reminding you how bizarre and hysterical humanity can be while trying to portray a semblance of health. It's completely absurd, yet everyone takes it so seriously, as if the key to eternal youth was just one enchanted skin cream away. When someone loudly proclaims that a pinch of powdered bat wings grants protection from bad luck, you can't help but chuckle. You imagine bringing that back to your friends at home, casually mentioning it to them as they sip their herbal teas. Would they too feel the thrill of such whimsical suggestions? And perhaps that's the beauty of it all, the complete ignorance surrounding health in the extravagant era of Versailles breeds levity. As the cocktail hour slowly drips into oblivion, a realization dawns. You're surrounded by perfectly ridiculous people who somehow make you feel like you belong. In this kaleidoscope of cocktails and cures, you find joy in the shared absurdity, and so with a giggle and a touch of skepticism, you raise your glass high. Because here in Versailles, laughter, remedies, and loads of colourful liquors are the order of the day, and that, above all else, might just be the best medicine. The night world of Versailles shines brighter and darker in one stroke, where nobles transform from buttoned-up lords to whispering shadows. Revelry takes centre stage, and if you're lucky enough, you may catch a glimpse into the secrets that hide beneath the base layers of extravagant gowns and stench-bearing perfumes. As twilight descends, the palace becomes a glittering playground where the rules of daylight fade like the last drops of morning dew on golden goblets. The chandeliers dangle like the oversized earrings of the courtiers, over-the-top, spectacular and somewhat gaudy, casting a twinkling glow on those who dare to join the nocturnal celebration. Ever wondered what it's like to wade through a sea of silk and satin while trying to avoid a scandal that could ruin your next 3 generations? Here, guests glide across the marble floors, their movements accompanied by whispers that flutter like the wings of delicate butterflies, or perhaps like the more scandalous tales of unkempt affairs. Imagine the air heavy with the smell of sweet pastries mingled with the sweat of jealousy, as rival noblewomen vie not only for attention, but also for the bestium-spiced chocolate drink. Yes, you heard that right. A chocolate drink that could put your morning coffee to shame. And then there's the music. Oh, the music. A cacophony that could make even the most unassuming peasant feel like they just walked onto a stage at the grandest opera. The violins screech, flirt, and whirl like intoxicated magpies caught up in their own tales of woe and desire. Each note is infused with whispers of past lovers, secret trysts hidden beneath the expertly stitched hems of gowns. Will you step forward and join in the dance, or will you choose to observe, perhaps from the safety of a particularly dense tapestry that smells suspiciously of mould? Your choice could lead to either a glorious evening filled with joy, or an eventual duel for the affections of an intrigued duke. But beware, dear listener. The undercurrent of danger buzzes through the air like a distant storm, for every gracious smile can disguise deceit sharper than a finely honed sword. As you enjoy the panoramic view of wealth and beauty, keep your ears perked for early warning signs, such as the whispered countess trading tales of seduction, or the nobleman suddenly too intoxicated to remember where he left his dignity. Is that someone reclining lazily against the wall, or just an unfortunate soul hoping to avoid being caught in a compromising position? Amid the mixture of laughter and flirtation, the dining tables groan under the weight of extravagant feasts. Lobster flown in from a questionable source, let's not discuss the smells wafting in as it's prepared, flows freely alongside glasses of fine wine, more intoxicating than a night spent arguing philosophy with a mad monk. You cannot overlook the spread of foods designed to dazzle, essences of rare fruits, playful pastries decorated like works of art, and Bündchen bickering about how many truffles should go on a single whimsy. You take note of who pretends to enjoy the delicacies, even as their faces contort into expressions of regret. As whimsical as the evening appears, all this gaiety often hides the restless spirit of revolution brewing just beyond the ornate gates of Versailles. Conversations bloom like late-night flowers, the whispers grow bolder, and alliances shift like the chandelier crystals above you. You share a knowing glance with the lady in the plum gown, who seems too attentive to the boundless discussions over increasing taxes and the fervour of the common folk, and suddenly you're gripped with the fear that these delights could come crashing down faster than a poorly balanced wig. Nobody but you notices the slight rustle in the corner filled with shadows. 3 courtiers huddled closely around a table, planning what? A new faction? A public outcry? The next target on their game of royal chess? The tension crackles louder than your glass of champagne as servants scurry like ants, trying to refill flutes, their expressions as careful as they are tired, caught between the laughter above and the dangers approaching below. As midnight approaches, the atmosphere shifts. The din of laughter becomes tinged with urgency. Masks and identities blur, and you wonder if the masquerade will ever truly end. The night might seem endless, but when dawn arrives, the consequences will come knocking like a well-armed tax collector. Revelry today, reckoning tomorrow. In the world of Versailles, the dance is only as light as the secrets left to uncover under the moonlight. In this sacred place where every nuance is woven with intrigue, your decision to sit back and watch or engage in worries becomes the true measure of your worth. Will you plunge into the antics of aristocracy, armed only with wit and humour, or will you retreat, forever haunted by the laughter and mischief that dance around corded silk? Remember, in a realm where the line between pampered dreams and grim realities narrows, the real adventure awaits those bold, or foolish, enough to join in. So buckle up and pour yourself another glass of questionable vintage. The royal affair of your life has only just begun. As the night wraps around you like a velvet cloak, the final secrets of Versailles unfurl. Promises of grandeur meet the darker side of indulgence, where riches and power come with threads of strife. Will you emerge enlightened, or dizzy from the kaleidoscope of lavish life woven amid the drama? Only time will tell what's left to uncover behind the opulent doors of the unsuspecting palace. The evening revelries have begun, and it's a spectacle that's part gallery opening, part circus, and all the more mesmerising for it. Nobles gliding from ballroom to ballroom resemble swans on a pond, but don't let that gilded illusion fool you. Underneath those layers of silk and satin, desperation dances just as vigorously as the waltz. You find yourself wistfully staring at the chandeliers, shimmering with the light of 1,000 mismatched candles. You have to wonder, how many of those twinkling lights are actually hiding the many secrets no one dares to speak of? The flickering glow feels like a metaphor for life here. Beautiful, yet infinitely precarious. Every corner of the palace echoes the whisper of scandal, and oh, how your ears perk up at every hushed conversation. Did you hear about the Duke of So-and-so and his habit of acquiring the latest fashion trends, even when he's embroiled in debts that could sink the whole castle? This place is a treasure chest of misadventures and questionable decisions, all disguised by witty repartee and tantalizing social gatherings. The fresh scent of perfume mixes with the faint whiff of something less desirable, the rancid remains of last week's fish banquet that someone accidentally left hidden in the pantry. And hey, who hasn't at least once tried to hide a bad casserole gift? Dancing across polished floors, nobles spin like the top of a spinning wheel, and for a moment you're captivated by the art of it all. Is that an actual peacock strutting through? No. It's just Madame Cochon's outlandish feathered hat that somehow stole the limelight from the music. You can feel the tension mounting as cringe-worthy compliments are exchanged like currency. Ah, delightful to see you again. Is that a new dress? Or are you just basking in the glory of a vicious rumour? The bravado makes you chuckle, It's like observing a particularly high-stakes game of charades gone wildly awry. But let's dissect the chaos for a moment. What about love? Or is it simply the next best thing to a strategic alliance? As you glance at the largely decorative couple, Lord and Lady several many names your eyebrows raise. Are they whispering sweet nothings or planning their next coup d'etat? The nature of romance in Versailles is habitually transactional, where every longing glance comes with a covert price, be it a title, a fortune, or a chance at revenge wrapped in a delicate handkerchief. As the clock strikes midnight, the mood shifts from euphoric merriment to confessional whispers. Small groups gather in, the corners of gilded rooms, almost like party subcommittees for philosophical debates about power dynamics. The grand hall holds not just opulence, but also the weight of judgment. What's revealed in hushed tones could very well lead to scandal or serve as fuel for tomorrow's gossip mill. The strings of loyalty tug at your heart, churning your gut into knots. Perhaps you should join. Eavesdropping might be the only way to assure your survival in this feigned paradise. And we cannot forget the ever-present ailing King Louis himself. Rumour has it he's simply a puppet, helping to pull his own strings while those more skilled plot his demise from the shadows. Isn't that the real scandal of Versailles? Even those cloaked in silk and finery struggle in a web of intrigue. Curses and conspiracies flutter about like moths drawn to the light, and you realise that you might need a less than tender exit strategy to navigate this intricate dance. Finally, as the clock in the ballroom tolls the hour, you lean into the extravagant chaos and embrace the duality of this enchanted reality. Being part of such opulence is intoxicating. Every person pivoting between excess and anxiety like flip sides of a rare coin. Perhaps enlightenment is as elusive as retaining your dinner after tasting the soup, thick with the fanciful promises of power, beauty and danger. With each step you are drawn deeper into the theatrical play that is Versailles, where the curtains draw on unresolved histories and your heart beats faster in anticipation of what's to come. Will you find the secret to your own role in this dizzying array of life at court, or will you merely become another tale lost in the sumptuous tapestry of the palace? Only time will tell.